to call our Murfreesboro City Council workshop meeting. We're here at the Airport Business Center. It's February 8th. Madeline is not going to be here today, so it's just going to be the six of us. If you will, before we get into our prayer and pledge, I want to read a couple of items. We had this past week lost two of our city team members, and so I want to read just a brief thing about each one of those gentlemen that passed away, and then also for our prayer we'll do a moment of silence and then go into the Pledge of Allegiance. David Bricker was 45 years old. David's family members, his wife is Cassie. He has a son, 15, Benjamin, who goes by Ben, and daughter, Emily. The city hired David as a firefighter on June 30th, 2003. He's been with us for 21 years. He was promoted to driver in 2011, promoted to captain in 2018. David received several department letters of commendations, a personal thank you for his actions from Mayor Tommy Bragg, and most recently, David received a City Stars Award for his selfless actions toward and helping an older adult. David loved being a Murfreesboro firefighter, which was evident every shift. Everyone enjoyed working with David. His peers leaned on him for strong knowledge of our job, his leadership, his positive attitude, and also for simply being a pleasure to work with. David loved to share stories about his wife and kids, whom he was incredibly proud of, and rarely there was a conversation when he didn't bring up his family. That's from Chief McCluskey. Also this week, Franklin Norval Smith, age 49, passed away. He was a traffic signal tech in the transportation department. He worked with Ron Balachandra. He had been with us 2 years and 7 months. He has a wife, Tequila. He has 4 children, Mark, Austin, Aiden, and Ashton, 3 11-year-olds, and 2 twins. And Ashton, who's 9. Franklin was a very gentle and caring person. He enjoyed spending time with his family. He would always make time to visit his kids in Memphis. He enjoyed exercising and working out. You could always find his wife and him in the gym 4 to 5 times a week. And that was from Randolph Wilkerson, our Director of Human Resources. Folks, we're a family here, and I know especially with the losses that we've had, it's everyone hard. So if you will, join me in a moment of silence. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. You've got several action items that we'll start with. We have the presentation of the fiscal year 2023 audit report. First time we've got to see you here at the airport, right?
No, and I hear since this is a workshop, Mr. Mayor, I can go on all day about this. So I'm going to try not to go too far with it, but it is a little less formal setting. Mayor and Council, thank you again for letting us perform this audit. A lot of work goes into this process. We get great cooperation from Jennifer and her staff, and we appreciate that. I've got 2 of my staff members over here, Suzanne Vandiver, who's done the audit for quite a while, and Dorda Marshall, who's joined us in the last couple of years, and she does a great job there too, so I'm happy to have them. I'm going to try to hit the highlights here, so you should have a copy of the report there. The report itself is already published to the website, so it's available on the city's website for anybody who wants to go out and look at that. As we've said in the past, we submit this report to a organization in Chicago called the Government Finance Officers Association for a certificate of achievement in reporting. That is Basically, a committee looks through this report and scrutinizes it, analyzes it for the reporting that's supposed to be there, the format, a lot of criteria. They usually give us a few suggestions based on their review, but it receives a certificate of achievement, and this is the 25th year in a row that the report for the city of Murfreesboro has received that award. So we're proud of that, and that is in here. Not every city submits a report for this. Probably only 10% or less of the cities in Tennessee would submit a report and get that award. So if you turn to, there's a tab called Independent Auditor's Report. That is just starts at page 1, and that is our report on the audit. It basically says that this is a clean opinion, that our opinion is that the report is fairly stated, and it is a clean report. Immediately following that is called Management's Discussion and Analysis. This is several pages, starts on page 4, and it is a summary of the past fiscal year's financial operations, gives some highlights of what's happening in the city. And it's a good summary to just read if somebody just wants to hit the highlights of what happened during this last fiscal year and some of the plans that the city has going forward. Beyond that, there's a tab called Government-Wide Financial Statements. We kind of go through this as I present this audit, but I think it's a confusing issue and it's worthy of kind of touching on. A city government has two ways to present their financial statements. One is called the government-wide financial approach, and that includes all assets of the city, including infrastructure, water and sewer assets, school buildings. All the assets of the city are included in this report. It also includes all the debt that's related to those assets, which would be long-term bonds and that sort of debt. So it's more like a business approach to reporting. On page 22, it's called the Statement of Net Position. This is the assets and liabilities of city, and like I said, it includes everything. And you'll see that it's broken down in two columns: governmental activities and business type activities. Governmental would be, like it says, the city government. Business type would include the utilities, water and sewer in this case, and that would be just what's included in that column. But you'll see total assets there are listed, and in the total column, you'll see that total assets for the entire city, including everything, including infrastructure, is $2.2 billion, excuse me. And liabilities were $882 million. So down at the bottom in the column, in the category that says net position, for general governmental activities, net position, which means assets minus liabilities, is $748 million at the end of the fiscal year. And for business type was $506 million. So the total net position is just over $1.2 billion. In other words, the assets exceed the liabilities by that amount at June 30th. Right behind that, page 23, is the statement of activities. This is not a budget approach. This is, again, the approach more like a business would have, where there's depreciation included in expenses. Everything is accrued, full accrual. And this format takes the expenses, lists them first there, like for police, for instance, expenses for the year were $53.9 million. And then to the right, there are categories of revenues that support those programs. And in the police, there's not a lot of revenue, fines and that sort of thing. So most of that expense is, of course, supported by taxes. That's that approach. Now, the other approach, of course, is the traditional governmental approach, which is behind the fund financial statements there. That's more of a budget basis. It doesn't include assets like buildings and infrastructure because we can't spend it in the next budget. It includes just the current assets that'll be available for next year's budget, and then current liabilities that we expect to spend in the next year. Now, what's important here that we usually point out is that under the general fund column, down under fund balance, unassigned fund balance, which is kind of like the reserve or what's available for future budgets, is $132.9 million this year. That's grown quite a bit from last year, and it represents 84% of the annual general fund expenditures. In other words, 10 months approximately of expenditures are accumulated in fund balance at the end of the year. So what that basically means, if all revenue stopped, the city could still continue to operate for about 10 months based on the expenses that we have currently. So that's a pretty strong position for the city to be in. So that's summarized there. Starting on page 28 is the general fund expenditures compared to the budget for the year. That goes on for several pages, and it's very detailed. And then there's a tab called Notes to Financial Statements. There are lots and lots of pages explaining city pension funds, details about debt, details about capital assets. A lot of information in those pages there. Moving on back, there's a tab near the back that's called Statistical Section. That starts on page 162. This information is usually, it has a lot of 10-year comparison information, so it's interesting to see how changes have occurred over that 10-year period. And you can see, for instance, let's see, 170 is a listing of all the major tax revenues for the last 10 years. And for instance, sales tax in 2014, the city collected $35.3 million. And in 2023 fiscal year, the city collected $70.3 million. So it's doubled over the time, that 10-year period, and grown over $3 million from last fiscal year. So it continues to grow in that area. Same thing with property taxes, and you can see that laid out there on those schedules. And let's see, the final section to point out is the single audit section, which is the last one there. Starts on page 186. As part of our audit, we're required to audit federal grant funds. And that includes making sure that the city has complied with requirements of those contracts, that revenue and expenses are recorded correctly and are spent the way they were intended to be spent. So that is a part of our audit. And on page 186, it lists the expenditures of those federal grant monies by program, and it'll show where those funds came from, which department, and how much was spent on each program. There's also a similar schedule for state awards. This does not include city schools grant funds, but it includes just those in the city and the water and sewer. In a city of this size, you would expect that there would be some findings. Normally, there's not a lot to point out. We did have one finding that involved CDBG department. We've already spoken with that department, and they're working to resolve that. But that's, like I say, it's not unusual, a city of this size, to have something, some suggestion or recommendation there. Well, Mr. Mayor, I could continue, but that's a summary, so we appreciate you letting us present that.
Mr. Joe, this though is everything. I mean, this includes city schools, water, so when you look at the total borrowing number, that is
Everything.
everything. So enterprise, I can't call them enterprise anymore, but, water, sewer, which are all a little different.
It does. It includes the entire city, all departments of the city and the city schools. So there's a lot included here. And there in the statistical section, there is information about debt, and I think this year it actually, there's statistics involving like per capita, debt per capita, and that number has actually gone down. And let's try to, that starts on page 175 if you're interested in that, but yes, net bonded debt per capita last year was $2,218. It's actually down to $1,941 per capita in '23. And there's also a schedule 178. There is a legal debt limit that's set by Tennessee Code. The city is only 27% to that capacity. So in fairly good standing as far as that goes.
Any questions?
Question on page 29, miscellaneous revenues donations received. Final budget was $8.5 million. Actual was $204,000. So the variance was $8.3. What was that, Jennifer, or excuse me, Aaron?
Can you tell me again where you were looking? I'm sorry.
Page 29, go up to the top under miscellaneous revenues, go down about 7 lines, says donations received. And it was a budget of 8.5, and the actual was 204,000. I'm just curious, what was that exactly that,
I think that was actually miscellaneous revenue was budgeted at 8.5. I don't know off the top of my head. I can research that and get back to you on that.
and the only other question, Aaron, would be when the county, Shane, help me out, when they cut that shared penny, I guess whatever it is, schools, that cost us, what, $1 million or $2 million? That would be reflected in here somewhere.
Yeah, I think in our third year, I don't know if Dr. Duke is here, but the last meeting we had, and Aaron, tell me if I'm wrong on this, but I think we're hitting our third year where that money has been moved around. So I think the number this year is 2.8 million, and it's based upon property tax revenue. And luckily, if you look at our chart on sales tax, we've been able to make it up in sales tax, but this is the first year in that third year period that it really hits the school system this year. So hopefully that won't happen again this year is what the hopes are.
I hope it doesn't, but I'm a realist. So, okay, that's all I have.
Any questions for Jennifer? Jennifer, I know this has been a lot of hard work on y'all's team, so congratulations on getting, I mean, an audit is like a never-ending doctor's appointment, because no one's ever called you a doctor, Mr. Joe, but...
They've said it was like going to the dentist, though.
Okay. But that's not only are you working on your daily job, but you're also putting this information together too. So this is a lot of great information. Aaron, can you tell the council, I think you've sent this in an email, but what was the total number that our budgeted revenues, our budgeted expenditures and our actual expenditures, what that difference was?
Looking at the audit, I think it was, I was looking at that just now, it's showing, it shows on here 60 million, but there are a lot of things that are included in that were capital items funded from general fund that carried forward. And very, like the ARPA grants and stuff like that. But our unassigned fund balance increased by a little over 9 million from 22 to 23.
Right.
So I'll get a breakdown of what the audit shows on those miscellaneous revenues, but most likely there would have been a miscellaneous expense offset to that, would be my guess. I'll have to double check that to see if that was some sort of miscellaneous grant or something like that. I know part of it would have the MED pension expense. We budgeted around $7 million for that expense, and it ended up being on the city side only $7 million split with Middle Tennessee Electric for $3.5 million each, and it ended up being closer to $1.5 million to $1.7 million. So right there we had $2 million at least in savings just on that one line.
I think it's just important to show that, I mean, I remember it's not been too long ago that the general fund was in the $60 million range, or our unassigned fund balance, and now we're at $132 million, which for the taxpayer allows us, when we talk about capital projects, we're able to use the money that we've saved and spend that money
Instead of borrowing.
instead of borrowing the money and then reimburse back. So
And we did include that on this year's CIP as well, to use some of that fund balance to reduce our borrowing needs for this FY24 CIP. You're right.
all right, any other questions?
Just a comment, and I know we mentioned it, but I want to mention it too. It's amazing with as many moving targets and standards that when you report government financing has changed over the years. And to stay on top of that and to have been given this award for 25 years is remarkable. It's Jimmy and his group and our group need to be commended for the preparation of this document. It's a lot to digest. There's a lot of information in there, and if you I encourage people that care about the details. Some people, that feeds their soul to deal with numbers. Some people, like myself, it's not necessarily feeding my soul, but it's a good way to get to sleep at night. But I also want to commend, and it's surprising a photographer would recognize that they did a beautiful job on the front cover. Amanda,
It's Amanda, our accounting manager.
Please commend her on the work on it. That's a beautiful photograph and certainly representative of our community. And this document is representative of our community. So just thank you, Jimmy, and all your team and our staff for the work that you've done. This is remarkable for 25 years to have been recognized. That's remarkable.
Take that photo in here.
I didn't take that photo. That's a great photo, though. She did a great job. Beautiful.
Any other questions? I don't think we have to adopt the audit, or you want us to adopt the audit?
I think we do a formal approval on council's, I think council formally approves the audit.
I move to accept it.
Have a motion?
Second.
Motion and a second. Ms. Brown, please call the roll.
Ms. Averwater? Aye. Mr. Maxwell?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Shacklet?
Aye.
Mr. Wade?
Aye.
Mr. Wright?
Aye.
Mayor McFarland?
Aye. Thank you all. Thank you all to your team. All right, we'll move to ordinance 23OZ44, rezoning property along Northwest Broad Street. This is second and final reading. Mr. Bonner.
I don't have anything. I'm here for
Okay.
questions if you have any.
There's no questions. I move for approval.
Motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Ms. Averwater? Aye. Mr. Maxwell?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Shacklet?
Aye.
Mr. Wright?
Nay.
Mayor McFarland?
Aye. All right, we'll move to mandatory referral for abandonment of a public utility easement along Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and good afternoon, Mayor McFarland and members of council. This mandatory referral is for the abandonment of two portions of a public utility easement at the rear of the Mercury Plaza Shopping Center along Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard. The owner of that shopping center is making some improvements to the center and would like to construct two loading docks at the rear of the center for future tenants. And there is a public utility easement and some water and sewer lines that are conflicting with where he wants to build the loading docks. We've surveyed the Water Resources Department as well as all other utilities. The only conflict were those water and sewer lines, and those will be relocated as will any necessary easement relocation if this is approved. The Water Resources Board recommended approval at its January 23rd meeting. Planning Commission recommended approval last night, and we would recommend that you approve subject to the conditions that are outlined in the council communication. Be happy to answer any questions.
If there are none, I'll move for approval.
Second.
Motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Ms. Averwater? Aye. Mr. Maxwell?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Shacklet?
Aye.
Mr. Wright?
Aye.
Mayor McFarland?
All right, we'll move to a mandatory referral for abandonment of a sanitary sewer easement along St. Andrews Drive.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a proposed development along the west side of St. Andrews Drive for the Murfreesboro Autism Clinic. We received a site plan for this development. It's on the portion of St. Andrews Drive that is south of New Salem Highway. There is a sanitary sewer easement that is in conflict with the required landscape buffer as well as the proposed solid waste enclosure for the new Murfreesboro Autism Clinic. And the Water Resources Department does not object to its relocation on site, to its abandonment, its current location, and then relocation elsewhere on site. The Water Resources Board voted to recommend approval at its January 23rd meeting. Planning Commission voted to recommend approval last night. And we would recommend that you approve subject to the conditions that are outlined in the council communication. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Second?
Motion and second, please call the roll.
Ms. Sagerwater?
Aye.
Mr. Maxwell? Vice Mayor Shacklet?
Aye.
Mr. Wright? Mayor McFarland?
Aye. All right, we'll look at a sewer allocation variance for South Rutherford Boulevard, Hearthwood Commercial Center.
Mayor and council members, this next item on your agenda today is a sewer allocation variance for a property located on South Rutherford Boulevard, named the Hearthwood Commercial Center. They are requesting an additional 25 single-family units of sewer capacity in order to construct the two strip center units that you see on your screen before you. Our Water Resources Department has received their engineering information and reviewed it and confirmed that the additional capacity is available in this area, and the Planning Department is also in favor of the application. I'm available if you have any questions.
If there are none, I'll move for approval.
Second.
Motion and second, please call the roll.
Ms. Sagerwater?
Aye.
Mr. Maxwell?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Shacklet?
Aye.
Mr. Wright? Mayor McFarland?
Aye. All right, we'll move to a sewer allocation variance, South Church Street for Panda Express.
Afternoon again. This, again, is a sewer allocation variance request for the Panda Express on South Church Street. Back in 2001 or 2021, the council approved a 3.6 single-family unit variance to the sewer allocation ordinance in order for the construction of the center. Up here. Here we go. Since then, the tenants have been finalized, and they are a little bit different from what they were originally. As a result, they need additional sewer capacity in order for everything to work as it should. They're requesting an additional 6.3 single-family units of sewer capacity at this time. That would bring it to a total of 10.3 single-family units between this request and the previous one. Our Water Resources Department has confirmed that the capacity is available in the area, and the Planning Department is also in favor of the application. I'm available if you have any questions.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, ma'am.
I ate at this place last week, so it's already built. Right? Okay. What happens if we say no?
I would have to defer to Mr. Blomley for that.
I'm sorry, I'm very curious.
That's a good question.
Saberwater, the request is based on the tenant mix that they're envisioning now. The existing Panda Express would not be affected. It would be their ability to lease the remaining tenant spaces to the tenant mix that they're proposing right now.
So not all of those are leased out currently?
That's correct. I believe they have 2 that are leased out, and then 2 more spaces that they have identified uses for.
Okay. And the reason for wanting an increase in the sewer, it's probably going to be a high-traffic business?
So they had originally identified a type of sandwich shop that would use less sewer than the Jersey Mike's that ended up going in there. And so I think the addition of that Jersey Mike's increased their demand. And then instead of, when they came before the council in 2021, the 4th tenant was unidentified. So I think they probably used just some generic numbers. Since then, they've identified a nail salon, which will, I think, use more sewer than a standard retail space would.
Interesting.
I think if it was denied, they would probably be restricted to low sewer retail type uses, and I see Mr. Gore nodding his head.
And what's the increase that they're requesting?
So they were approved for a variance of 3.6 single-family unit equivalents, and they're requesting a variance of 6.3. So they're going up about 2.7 single-family units above what they had requested previously.
Well, I hope we don't make a practice of letting everyone double their sewer usage after it's constructed.
But it's only, you said 2 or 6 single-family units?
Well, the
Equivalent of.
the collective variance, if you will, is 6.3. They were approved for 3.6 previously, so they're adding 2.7 onto their previous variance.
2.7 is being added.
Yes.
Okay. I'm just happy that Darren Gore doesn't have to drive across town to go to a spa to get a pedicure or a Jersey Mike's sandwich. So.
Panda Express. Yeah.
And Panda Express too, so.
Can I ask a quick question? I think we're on our 5th year that we've had the sewer allocation variance. Is that right, Darren? Man, I need you to pay a little more attention back there.
I distracted
Under the
him.
bus and backed it up, Darren.
I distracted him, Mayor, so my apologies.
Okay, so
4 years.
we're going on 5 years. You know, when we passed the sewer allocation variance, one of the things that we really were looking at was residential growth. It was mainly for looking at sewer basins like multifamily and especially high-dense residential areas, even though we left out the CBD district. That's probably not good to say CBD district today when Candy Crush, that trial's going on. Nobody else catches that, but
CCO and the GDO were both.
So my question is, we keep getting these commercial variances that are coming up. Is there something that we need to like readdress from a water and sewer standpoint to really make a determination that we need Dutch Brothers Coffee or Panda Express, or, you know, every time a restaurant wants to come in, the way that our ordinance is written right now, the majority of the time, they're going to have to ask for a sewer variance because restaurants are using more than what we allocate. It just seems like it's a waste of time to have someone come every single time there's a new commercial development ask for a sewer variance. Can we readdress that, or does it need readdressing? If you say no, it's fine.
I don't know if I need to get to a mic or if I need.
Yes, please.
I can't imagine like a coffee shop is using a ton of sewer. They're using a lot of water, but.
Right. So for food service establishments, if the council would like for food service establishments to receive a kind of a blanket, whatever sewer usage, I mean, they do increase sales tax, they are commercially taxed, they do have employees that they hire. If you'd like to say that if it's a food service establishment, they are exempt from coming forward, if we have the capacity, that is, then that'd be a category, a very specific, because they're the ones that do, and we foresaw that. We knew that every food service was effectively going to have to ask for a variance. Ordinary retail would not, because they're going to be within the allocation standard.
Yeah, I mean, normal retail is only going to have 1 or 2 bathrooms per.
Right. It'll be very, very low.
I'm just asking the question. If you say, look, it's fine the way it is, but.
It creates a review, an additional level of review that could be avoided. So if staff, I mean, I'm sure staff would appreciate not having to do it, and if you all would appreciate not having to go through something that you would consider a routine or somewhat of a rubber stamp process, then I don't have a problem at all.
I mean, you guys are getting it at the planning commission level to talk about site plan and all those other things, but it's just a thought. I mean, that may be another discussion, but.
I don't think.
I'd like to think on it more.
Yeah.
Because I see the benefit, I do know procedurally it's difficult, and we do see it at Planning Commission, and then we see it again here, but I guess in my mind, if we let all the restaurants use all the sewer allocation, where are the people going to live, and we don't need 7 Whataburgers on Old Fort Parkway, and, maybe we need 5 other restaurants. I don't know. I have thoughts.
The strip malls are a little different because most of the time they're built, they don't have they don't know who they're leasing it to. So a lot of times they may plan for 1 or 2 food service, and it may end up being the majority of food service. But yeah, I think based on the formula that staff currently, the algorithm, if you will, that we use, where we say commercially taxed, does it create employment opportunity? Right. Does it generate sales tax? With those 3 we check those, we're going to recommend it. If it's got capacity, we're saying if it hits those 3 boxes, we're going to recommend approving it, and you all typically approve it based on staff's recommendation, but it's not a problem. I mean, like you said, we've been doing it for a few years. We've got our pace, our feet underneath us, and we can go through it if you all would still like us to. We can talk more later.
I think it'd be good for the council to have that discussion, or maybe come up with some other process that either the number's too low, that it's having to come to us every single time, but if it's something that it's in if it's in a critical basin that there's not service, maybe you let us know that and that comes to us, but it just seems like there's so...
Maybe like an administrative approval for a certain percentage increase.
Yeah.
But if it's over a certain percentage, then it requires council approval.
So how does planning, Greg, Sam, what do you guys think about that?
I guess I just want to chime in here, and maybe Greg can help answer this. I think I'm shocked as a planning commissioner that, I guess from the planning commission side, we don't usually see it when they want to change the tenant use. Obviously, we approve the strip, but I think that's my planning commission brain was triggered.
Well, and the other thing too, Jamie, is that whenever someone that use changes, it also triggers parking requirements that, if you've got a restaurant, if you've got someone that wants to go on the end, it's a more intense, for example, a Smoothie King compared to Jimmy John's, their parking requirements are going to be, it affects the
Or
entire...
an AT&T versus a Mexican restaurant.
Yes,
like.
absolutely.
But those site plans aren't able to move forward until the sewer allocation or the parking requirements have been met before it gets to planning commission as well, so.
But I think we're saying this is already built.
Yes, but the uses would be managed by what they're able to do, whether, if you guys don't approve the sewer allocation, then the uses would be limited to what they could use, and then if the parking requirements for whatever use went into this building wasn't able to be met, then the uses would be limited.
To the mayor's question, who approves the change in parking?
They'll work with the site plan, and then if it is a change in parking, it would come before you guys,
Come before council
or planning commission.
and council, or just planning?
Just planning commission. For the site plan.
Typically, when the strip center's built, you can't change your parking, because...
Right, it's already built.
What happens is, say in this case, if you've got 10,000 square feet and you were to lease 5,000 square feet to 2 restaurants, then what you're doing with that additional 5,000 square feet, you're limiting what can go in there because you can't meet parking requirements. So, if it's 1 parking spot per table or whatever that is, it's going to be a lot different than the 1 parking spot per 300 feet or 200 square feet or whatever that number is. So what may happen if someone doesn't pre-plan, they may lease a couple of spots and then get down to the end and not have enough parking for their space that's not built yet.
And we're seeing that now because 1,500 square feet to 2,000 square feet is premium space right now, and they're normally doing it for like outdoor storage, but now accountants are going in at dance studios, so that parking is becoming a real something that we're reviewing real closely right now because of that, those changing uses. But as far as if sewer allocation, it's going to come forward with all restaurants. That's what we're seeing. So I think we're okay with it being a percentage, working with water and sewer, if that's what we need to do. But otherwise, we're going to bring them forth every time.
So even if we put something in place that allows an administrative approval for a minimal change, we would still see it. If it were significant enough, we would still see it again for the parking requirements? Is that right? Am I hearing that right?
It's going to be varied. It depends on what the use is. A strip mall, it's just going to be limited to what they could put in that actual strip mall.
This one, for example, there's
Yep.
5 units and two of them are available, right? I think 3 are restaurants or 2 are restaurants or something already. So if they want to make the 2 that are available also restaurants, the city would require more parking in that case.
We would just tell them the use would not be allowed because the parking requirements can't be met.
Even if
So
the council, even if you administratively approve the sewer variance?
we wouldn't administratively approve it.
It would never get that far.
Never get that far.
I see,
Yeah.
okay.
So administratively, we do make sure all the requirements are met during the time of the site plan review. But if they don't meet it, we don't let them move forward. So even now with the sewer allocation, they have to get that before they can actually submit to move forward. even go further in this process.
Okay.
Maybe y'all come back with us with a couple of recommendations now that we've got 5 years of track record. My whole thing is, if we keep seeing the same thing coming back and it's a rubber stamp, then from a governmental side, is this red tape that we're requiring to happen that is going to get approved anyway, which takes an extra 30 days for the applicant to go through, plus I'm sure our engineers in water and sewer and planning have a lot of other things that they can be working on besides something that's just going to automatically be approved. If we think our standard is too low already, it may just need to be increased. I mean, we're not talking about multifamily and apartments, but if this keeps coming back every single meeting with something, then let's find a way that we may not have to do that.
Let us try to pull something together for March and maybe even the April workshop. We'll come back and work with legal, and we've kind of got a table of single family, the densities that we allow. Maybe we can create a special category for food service and give a couple options and let you guys decide how you'd like to move forward.
Again, this is not going to change industrial where you're really looking whether it's a wet or dry. It's really just food service.
It really is, right.
Okay.
If it can be more efficient versus, an owner trying to get his doors open to a business and he's waiting on us to say, yeah, you can have 2 more connections.
Sure.
Meanwhile, he's lost revenue, and we don't want him to lose revenue and go out of business.
We do not.
Yeah, I'm in favor of that. In this case, Darren, while you're up there, we're talking, again, two connections, and there's probably how many remaining in this basin?
Oh, gosh, I don't know offhand. Yeah, I mean, it's when you're going from, say, we allow them to have 2 or 4, I can't remember commercial actually, maybe 4 single-family units per acre. So these are pretty tight little spots. What is it? Oh, there's 5,252 connections, remaining.
52 or 5,000?
5,252, I'm sorry. This is Valerie's work.
Well, in that specific basin, that basin, we have a lot more capacity than we do remaining in other basins.
So in this case, 2 out of 5,200 is no big deal.
Right, it's de minimis.
If it was like, hey, we need 10 more, and you're under 500, then that's a different discussion.
If this was being built on Highway 99 at Rockville, we'd be having an issue. We don't have the capacity.
Right, so we can look at the capacity, and if it's considered de minimis, and we can run that as a percentage. If it's less than 0.5% of what the remaining connections in the basin, and it's food service, we can set up a set of kind of guidelines that you all can adopt and staff can use as our new formula. Because you're right, we don't want to be bureaucratic. We want to be streamlined and let people get their doors open, for sure.
Yeah, and I do too, Austin. I want it to be efficient and make sense, but I also don't want to leave our kids and grandkids with no sewer capacity.
Sure,
in Murfreesboro.
absolutely. We'll come up with something and do a little razzle-dazzle. Which I know, sewer is always so exciting for you guys to deal with.
It's you, Darren.
There was a motion. If there's not a second, I'll make a second.
We voted on it, didn't we?
No.
Okay, motion and second. Ms. Brown, please call the roll.
Ms. Averwater?
Aye.
Mr. Maxwell?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Shacklet? Mr. Wade?
Aye.
Mr. Wright? Mayor McFarland?
Aye. Thanks, guys. All right, we'll move to the continuum of care update. Ms. Kristen Swan with United Way is here to brief us.
Thank you, guys, for your time. I'm going to be very brief, but I wanted to just kind of give you an update with our local continuum of care and our homeless response system. Before I do that, I want to give you just a little bit of data when we talk about a homeless response system. What does that even mean? What does that look like in our community? So one of the things at United Way that we look at is what we call ALICE data. So ALICE stands for Asset Limited, Income Constrained, and Employed. A lot of times people will use the term working poor. These are people that are in our community that are working but are still not able to afford the true cost of living. And I'll never forget, I was in a presentation one time and the presenter asked, does anyone know the most common cause of homelessness? And of course, in my mind, I'm thinking addiction, mental health, whatever. And she said it's actually people that are living in poverty or people that are living paycheck to paycheck and something happens and they're not able to pay their rent and they lose their housing. That's a lot of people in our community. So in Rutherford County, it's almost 50% of our folks are at the ALICE threshold or below. And in this zip code where we're sitting, 37130, that number's higher. We're at 64% of folks that are in this zip code are at the ALICE threshold or higher, which means they're really not able to afford the true cost of living. They're living paycheck to paycheck. They don't have savings, and a crisis happens, and we can all imagine what happens from there. So a little bit more data that we've collected. You can see the ALICE, how that's looked from 2016. I'm happy to report that the folks that are above the ALICE threshold in our county has increased, which is great, but you can see the number of folks in our community that are paying more than 30% of their income on housing, less than 30% of their income on housing has decreased, and that's certainly something to look at. So another piece of data, I think that a lot of times when we think about someone experiencing homelessness, this is probably the picture that we all think about, right? So on our current active list, we have 103 adults, 39 households with minors, and 4 veterans. The active list are people that have been assessed by a common assessment tool that I'm going to talk about in a little bit, and are waiting for services. So that's what we have currently as of 2 days ago. Rutherford County looks at McKinney-Vento, which is a little bit different than the HUD definition of homelessness. So last year, at the end of the school year, they had 1,637 students, and currently right now, as of 2 days ago, they have a little over 1,700 kids that they've helped. So that number will certainly continue to climb as the school year goes on. Our annual PIT count, which is the point in time count, there's one night every year that our community counts those that are experiencing homelessness. It's a census. And I have to give a shout out to Sergeant Wood over there. I've heard he doesn't like attention, so I won't embarrass him, but his host team is really, really a huge help in this process. We did see an increase in that number this year from 339 last year to 400 this year. We don't want to see that number go up. Obviously, we don't want people to be experiencing homelessness. However, it's really important for us to count that because it does determine how much funding our community gets from HUD. It's one of the pieces of that equation. The other thing, though, that I think we don't always think about are these families that are in ALICE, that are paycheck to paycheck, that kind of come up in crisis. When we started digging into this data, we worked with our friends at the Legal Aid Society. They're one of our partners, and they said that they would estimate that there's probably about 10,000 evictions in Rutherford County every year. That's just from their work with the community. They represent a lot of these folks in court. And so those are the people that I think go a little bit unnoticed. And we're talking about the homeless population. That's probably not who we readily think about. So that's just a little bit of kind of what we're dealing with, if you will. This is information from our LSA, which is from our Homeless Management Information System. In this report, which was October 21 to September 22, the average days homeless in our community was 70. Only 13% of those that were accessing services exited to a permanent destination. I don't think I have to tell you, but that's not good. And 3% of those folks returned to the system after exiting. Okay, so after I say all that, I just want to give you a quick update on our continuum of care. So the continuum of care is all of the agencies and folks in our community that are working to respond to homelessness here in Rutherford County. So it's not an entity, it's not an organization, it's really a collection of agencies that are responding to this. So back, and if you guys have heard of HARC, they were serving as the collaborative applicant, the coordinated entry lead, and the HMIS lead. We have to have all of those things to receive money from HUD as a community. And so it was kind of determined that we needed to go through an RFP process as a community to see if another entity was interested. And United Way applied, and we were chosen to serve in all 3 of those roles. So really quickly, I want to just tell you about coordinated entry. Since we've kind of assumed this work and assumed this role, 40 people in the following organizations have been trained on a common assessment. That's important because it allows us to know who's most vulnerable, who needs to be prioritized for services, because we know there's not enough. There's never going to be enough services to go around. So these agencies have been trained to do the assessment that's then put into our coordinated entry system. We're also utilizing 211. If you're familiar with 211, it is our local information referral line. So we're really trying to streamline folks kind of having one number they can call when they're experiencing homelessness instead of this kind of mass confusion. What do I do? Where do I go? We are piloting this and we're working on our standard operating procedures right now. So that's not live, but that should be live very soon. So we're excited about that. One story I will tell about coordinated entry. So just recently, last week, there was a young woman who was experiencing homelessness, and an agency reached out to our coordinated entry manager and said, hey, we have a bed. Do you have someone? She did. She, referred this young woman, and she was able to go from homelessness to shelter in 6 hours. And that is the power of this system. That is a wonderful success story. And so I really just wanted to give you guys an update because I know many of you are familiar with HARC and just wanted you to know kind of where we are and what's going on there. So I'm sure I don't have much time for questions, but does anybody have one?
Any questions?
211 is not active now, or?
211 is active, but we're utilizing it to be able to direct people to these entry points. And so if someone has no idea where to go, they've never heard of any of these agencies, they can call 211 and they will say, kind of get some information from them and say, okay, you can go to one of these spots and they're going to assess you. You only have to go to one place, right? We don't want to re-traumatize people and send them to 12 places where they have to fill out an application. This is really streamlining that process, and 211 will direct them to where to go.
There's a couple of agencies I don't see up there and that are doing a lot of work in the community. Is there any reason why have they chosen not to be a part of this, or?
I'm happy to have a conversation offline if you'd like. These agencies have chosen to be a part of it. It's not anyone is able to be trained on the assessment to do that. So I just have to know the agency to know the situation. But yes, anyone can be trained on the assessment to do that.
And any of these agencies can do that entry.
Mm-hmm. They're all doing the same assessment, which is really great because before we had lots of people doing different things and it was hard to prioritize services that way. So.
And all of these agencies refer to a common database so that if somebody appears at another place, then they can say, we've already got you in. Okay.
Yeah. Yes, sir. Yep. Anything else? Okay. Thank you all. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Chris. All right, we'll move to the 2024 Murfreesboro Charitable Investment Trust Charitable Contribution Funding Recommendations.
I'll take it. So the Trust Board met on the 24th, which was the night after actually the Committee on Contributions met to decide on final allocation. The Trust Board approved it. They asked for a report. We provided the report. You have in front of you on the large sheet the recommendations that the committee made. I'll just say quickly that the committee worked very, very hard on all the applicants this year. They put in a lot of time. I really appreciate it. Carl Montgomery, the chair of our committee, is here if you have any specific questions about it. They did an outstanding job in putting this all together. And then Angela and Karen Lampert in the back there really spent a ton of time doing the administrative background work to allow the committee to make their recommendations and go through their considerations. So, a great deal of thanks on the process is owed both to the committee and Carl, our chair, and Karen and Angela. So the council's role from the trust document, which I gave you a copy of, is really to take a look at this and veto anything that they don't, any particular contribution in there that's been recommended that they don't see as one that the council would like to have funded. And if that occurs, then it would go back to the board and they would decide what to do from there. So that's really the council's role at this point. We'd ask for council to take a look at that, and if they, you can approve it. If you'd like to take more time, we can put it on an agenda item. But if you have any questions, like I said, Karen's here, and Mr. Montgomery's here, so I'm happy to answer those.
Hey, Carl, like, y'all done a great job. You got a ton of requests. I mean, just lots of requests, almost $1 million in requests. And, you only had 364,000 to work with. So I guess the method to the madness, like, how did y'all come with the decision, if somebody's asking 10,000, you give them 7, somebody's asking for 65 and you give them 15?
Carl? Just over here, because we're recording, so.
And you don't have to do it in your auctioneer voice.
Actually, I demand it.
I'm just curious, because, it's tough decisions.
It was tough, and we had to end up we did a weighted average once we culled it down to the ones that we were going to fund. Some of them were over in the category as far as their request, and then there was one category that was under the request. So we had to cut that amount out and then do a weighted average for each one of them. But we were able to fund 66% of the applicants, which was an average of about $12,500 an applicant. I will say it was an honor to serve on this committee. We had great members, and it was eye-opening to see the number of nonprofits that serve our community that I didn't even know about. And then you start reading about them and reading what they do. It's amazing. And as the fund grows, it's going to be a great opportunity to fund more, have a greater impact, I guess, for the city. Nonprofits, but that's how we came up with our numbers. It was complicated, and it was basically a full-time job for a month.
And some are specific, like they would have a specific project, that they wanted, like for Discovery Center. It says safety and access at Discovery Center. So that's pretty specific. Not picking on Greenhouse Ministries, but it says Greenhouse Ministries operating expenses. So it sounds a little less specific, but they do a lot of good work, but I'm sure y'all had more specifics as to what it was really going towards.
That's correct. And we actually have another meeting coming up at the end of February, I believe, end of February. This first one was a lot of learning on how to formulate things and the questionnaires, and so I'm really looking forward to, and I had all our committee members making notes as they were grading each person to see what's logical, what's not logical, what may be something we need to change. And so hopefully in the next meeting and before the next round, we'll have some changes, but for the most part, it was a very smooth process for our first go-round.
Thank you for doing it.
Yes, sir.
Not easy, I'm sure.
Anybody else?
Any questions? All right. We'll need to...
You can, if council's ready, they can adopt it and pass on it now, and then we'll go through the rest of the process. If they'd like more time, we can bring it back in the evening meeting, either way.
When this is passed, how quickly do these funds get out?
July. They'll go in the next budget year. Yeah.
So we can pass it today or pass it in 2 weeks.
I'm fine passing it today. I'll make a motion to approve it as listed.
Second.
Motion second. Please call the roll.
Ms. Saberwater?
Aye.
Mr. Maxwell?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Shacklet?
Aye.
Mr. Wade?
Aye.
Mr. Wright? Aye. Mayor McFarland?
All right. All right, we'll move to the restatement of the employee handbook.
This is really just for informational purposes. We've gone over the last, well, we started a project probably in 20, I think, and then put it on hold for a while. But the project was to redo our employee handbook. This is the current employee handbook right here. And most of these pages are double-sided printed. This contains all of what's required of an employee and managers and everything else in the city. So it's, over the years, been incrementally added to time and time again, so it's kind of developed into something like this. Our restatement divides the book up into four, as I mentioned, 4 different manuals. The policy manual on council's level. If you restate these policies and pull out what we believe are truly policies that the council would be concerned with, it turns out to, this notebook, which is much more useful for people to use, and then administrative directives, and then a couple other notebooks will have forms in it, our safety manual, and things like that. So much more useful. It's a lot of work to review it, I understand, because, you're trying to figure out how this got to this. Right now, it's under review by all of our executive team, director's input. Legal's worked on it quite extensively. Randolph and his team on HR has looked at it extensively. So the plan would be sometime in the March timeframe, maybe mid-March, if council's ready to go forward, if doesn't have any questions on the process and how we got there, to have council adopt the policy manual. What do you call it? I don't know, official word. Get rid of this one, whatever the vote would be, we'll figure that out. Get rid of this manual, adopt a policy manual, and then the administrative manuals would be put into place, and we'd go forward. We'd give, and Adam just mentioned, and he's right, we'll give a little time period on when everything's effective to give, people, because organizationally, we don't want to turn the ship too fast. So, but that's where we're at on the process. If you have any questions about how we did it, if you had an opportunity to look at it, I know I sent you links that would get you into more paper than you'd ever want to look at, but if you have any questions on those, happy to answer those or answer them later. But that's our time frame. That's what we're looking at.
What's the policy, and Adam will probably know what I'm bringing up here, in regards to if an employee is handling money, counting money, having to take off time, like a set amount of days. And I think you probably know what I'm referencing.
Right.
That one person who is handling money in a department, but also has a lot of, say, unexpected doctor's visits, medical visits, and I'm sure there's time allocated for that, but if they're also having to take time off because they handle money, pretty soon they get into a bind. Is there a policy around that, and is there any flexibility to address that when you run into these one-offs?
The policy doesn't have any exceptions for allowing a person not to take the time off because it's a financial controls issue. So banks have the same thing. I mean, my son works at a bank. He's not a teller, but he has access to cash. He's got to take X amount of days off. Vacation days is what he has to do. And that's part of the job when you take a cash handling job, is that you have to be gone a certain amount of days, and there's a reason for that, a specific reason for that. There isn't really a one-off situation, I guess, an employee can come and ask, but it could be reviewed. The policy itself doesn't address that. It's just part of the job.
Craig, can I speak to that one? That specific policy, it's 5 consecutive days away from the workplace. It allows you to use comp time, vacation time, sick time. You can also go to attend a training or a conference as long as you are away from the workplace for 5 consecutive days. So that specific policy that you're referring to, it's a 5 days away for those who handle money.
You go to a conference for training, are you going paid or unpaid?
Yeah, you go paid.
Paid if you're attending the conference as part of your work.
As part of your work?
Right.
Okay. So that would be up to that individual person and supervisor saying, this is necessary, go to this conference. Okay.
And the hard thing about writing a policy to get around that is if you create too general of a rule, then you'll potentially have employees that are using up all their vacation time and just saying, now I want time off to be paid. So it's kind of hard to go in there. There'll be exceptional circumstances to almost any policy that you write. If we have exceptional circumstances, generally we usually are successful at addressing those. But there's a lot of factors involved usually when we consider whether we're going to do that or not. Sneak up on you.
He's going to count money right now.
So do we need a
Be
motion
money in parks, but I don't know.
for the reinstatement? Restatement?
What's that?
No, I don't think we're ready to do that.
Okay.
Oh, no,
No, we'd bring it back.
to explain it, because it is a little, it's a lot to lay on. It's a heavy lift to lay on, I understand, council, because it's a lot of paperwork. And so I wanted to explain the process.
Gotcha.
To everyone and what we're looking at and answer any questions on that.
How many employees count money, Jennifer? Off the top of your head, not to put you on the spot. Is it 10, 20, 50? Or maybe that's a question for Craig or
Well, you got some.
the staff.
We've probably got a dozen. It really covers almost every department, any department that takes money.
But you could have.
Cover almost every department within the city.
Patterson, I mean,
Tax example.
It's not just a couple, it's widespread.
Every department in the city.
Usually 3 or 4, at a minimum, 3 or 4 individuals in each department or in each office.
And offline, we can provide stories from other jurisdictions of why such controls are important.
Why
Yeah, they're all,
Going to break the workflow so that if anything's going on, it's hard to continue.
Yeah.
Next.
Handles money, Austin.
Yeah, the staff handles it. It's another one of those functions of staff. Count the money.
all right. Any questions on the December 2023 dashboard? All right, seeing none. We don't have any board and commission appointments. Do we have any beer or any licensing?
We do not.
All right. Aaron, I think we have no statements to be paid. Aaron, I think you had a couple things under other business.
I do, thank you. I have a CIP reallocation I laid out for y'all. This is just an administrative correction to reallocate about $14,000 from the land acquisition and contingency line back to facilities to cover the balance on the fire station roof replacement project, so we can close that out. I'm happy to answer any questions on that.
Motion, or is it just administrative?
I do need a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Motion second, please call the roll.
Ms. Saberwater?
Aye.
Mr. Maxwell?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Shelley? Mr. Wade?
Aye.
Mr. Wright? Mayor McFarland?
Aye.
And then I also laid out the budget calendar for y'all. I think Mr. Tyndall emailed that out to you last month as well, but, we're following the same schedule as we typically follow, but if you see any dates that are on there, especially when we get into the May and June timeframe when I'll be presenting the budget, and also we'll have the public hearing and first and second reading. If y'all see any conflicts, please let me know. Also, this is a great time for us to discuss if there's any goals or initiatives that y'all want to see addressed in next year's budget, or y'all can just think on it and get back with Craig or me, and we'll make sure we address that as we're building that budget.
Awesome.
And also that's what, during the budget calendar, you'll be, we meet with our team before, and that's also a significant part of what those discussions are about as well.
Right. Yeah, we'll meet individually with y'all throughout the process as needed. Usually when we've got a pretty good grasp on what the needs across the city are and how things are looking on our revenue projections and things like that, just to kind of update y'all and adjust where necessary if there's something that you want to make sure is included or, anything like that.
Okay, any questions for Aaron? Any other business from staff?
We will meet on the 15th, next Thursday. That's our first meeting of the month, so it'll be public comment. And regular night meeting. Oh, I know what I was going to say. That afternoon, or that noon, is the chamber lunch, I think. Everybody there. I forget what it's called.
Business at its best.
Business at its best, chamber lunch at the embassy, I think.
Any other business from council members?
Just to ping pong off with Aaron, talking budget. If I had to say like two big wishes, and recreation, it sure would be nice to have another sports com type facility on the west side of the city. It would be nice. I think I brought this up once before. We've got city schools with probably some land capacity. It'd be nice to have some ball fields at some of the city schools if Trey Duke is amenable to that. And then thirdly, an ice rink. I think, Craig, you've kicked that around before, that would be a big win for the city. Mm-hmm. So I think those are things we need to think about, is some sort of sports com, additional ball fields, an ice rink, because we have grown quite a bit. And then on a personal thing, I've been dealing with a lot of issues with my mother. You go to Westbrook Towers 2 or 3 years ago, no waiting list. Then they got up to a 3-year wait. And they cut it off. Now they're down to an 11-month wait. And perhaps that's something that we look at some point in time. Do we have enough capacity for housing, for our seniors in the community? I know I'm throwing out a lot of stuff,
yeah.
But there's a lot of challenges and a lot of stuff that people want. There's only so much to go around.
On the last part, of course, Murfreesboro Housing Authority does that.
Yeah.
And they're separate from the city. But recently, they've come back to us with something they need to work with financial markets to develop more. And that wasn't too long ago when they brought that. Remember that?
Yeah,
It's like 2 or 3 months ago, they brought in a letter that we just needed to look at. I think somebody signed it. I'm not sure if the mayor signed it or if I signed it.
we brought it before council.
We brought it before council, yeah. So that was to help them with their financing situation. So there are plans, is my point, to look at that.
That was the pilot.
Yeah.
Pilot. That's right, it was a pilot. Thank you.
Austin, to piggyback on that, had a real interesting meeting last week. Kelly Beam had gotten this group put together, but it was a group that came in from out of state. And Craig, I'd like to ask that we could put this maybe on our next workshop to really talk about the Sports Authority. But what this was about was the 127 acres out on Highway 96. And, everyone will come in and want to build a sports facility, but, the honest numbers in the city, by the time you go with all of our codes and landscaping and all those things, building a big metal building inside the city just is almost impossible for that type of use. But what we talked about was on the Highway 96 property, trying to find a way to partner with a group like we did TSSA, where you've got a group that would come in. Those fields would be available, for example, Monday through Friday for recreational use, like what we've done at Siegel. But then that group would in turn be responsible for running and managing a portion of the facility where tournaments would take place on maybe Friday nights and through Sunday. And then at the same time, maybe a hotel be built, because there's no hotel space on the west side of town really right now. So, but that could be accomplished through a sports authority much better than what we're doing it right now. And under our current Parks and Recreation model, you can look at how much money we spent last year, how many fees we collected. If there's a way that we can find to subsidize a park being built that may cost $22 to $25 million, but we can show that that park also is not a big drain on our debt service and the taxpayer, then that's the best of both worlds, where it's sort of what Smyrna is doing right now. If you go to Cedar Grove or Cedar Creek, we play tournaments there all the time, but they're on Friday night, Saturday, and Sunday. And then the leagues use those facilities Monday through Thursday. So Austin, I think there's a great way. And the other thing I think you need to throw on there, as we talk about an indoor facility, ICE, maybe partnering with the Preds. Kurt has brought that up numerous times and had that conversation, but, I could envision a sports com / ice rink / aquatics facility that, as the counties keep building high schools and have swim teams, they don't have pools.
Riverdale and Oakland, maybe Blackman.
Riverdale, Oakland, and Laverne are the last three that have pools, and they were all built in the 70s. So
The aquatics ice facility was included in our CIP, not for FY24, but maybe design in FY25 and looking at construction in 26, depending on how all the timing works. So it's nothing set in stone, obviously, since y'all haven't approved those years, but that has been a consideration in the CIP.
it really needs to be an overriding discussion on how, now that we've gone through TSSA and we've partnered and we understand sort of how that facility works now, and then we can put numbers to say this is how much the hotel motel tax that comes in, this is how much sales tax revenue comes in. There may be a better way to monetize where it's residence use and commercial sports use, where that commercial sports use subsidizes the cost of it being the resident side. So that way there's a good mix, because if we talk about $25 million, you're really talking about 5 cents on the property tax rate is what that number is going to be. If you can get that number down to where it's nothing, then I would imagine if you ask most residents, say if this facility is used on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday for commercial, still kids around here will be using it, but that's paying for not having a tax increase. I think most people would say absolutely. So Craig, if you'll put that on the agenda. And then Adam needs 5 minutes to update us on
update council members on the status of the city's lawsuit against BFI Waste Systems and Republic Services.
So I'm going to close this meeting, and then we'll go into the conference room to discuss that. We'll stand adjourned.